to consider that on the way through. Kia ora tātou.
Mr. Speaker.
I call the Honourable Minister, Chris Finlayson.
Ena mana ena reo koutou mā o Ngāti Rongowhakaata no mai haere mai ki te Paramata.
Tēnā koe, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm genuinely delighted, and that's no hyperbole, to speak in this third reading debate. I became the Minister for Treaty Negotiations in late November 2008, and I agreed with my officials that I would destroy their holiday and take them on a hikoi in mid-January 2009 so that I could meet some of the iwi that I'd be dealing with. And so the first flight was up to Tairāwhiti, and the first meeting was with the good people that are in the gallery today. And that's where I first met Stanley Pardo, Kristen Maynard and others. And so it's been, even since 2009, a long and somewhat convoluted journey, but we're here today, and I do acknowledge the negotiators, particularly you, Stan. It's been great to get to know you and to work with you. I am just so pleased that we've reached this stage. And I also wish to acknowledge others who have come from Turanganui-a-Kiwa to join us today, because this is a very, very important day in the life of the country, and this bill has its unique features. It's not a mere deal, as some insultingly describe it, but it's a very important settlement of grievances that go to the heart of our nation, because it gives effect to a deed that Rongowhakaata have negotiated with the Crown. It contains Crown acknowledgements, which are very important, and I suggest that if people don't know much about the history of what happened, they should read those acknowledgements, they should read the preamble, and the bill also contains provisions for cultural and commercial redress. And it's very important to acknowledge the contribution of negotiators. It's not pro forma thanks, because these negotiators in this particular matter have worked on this claim for more than a decade. The Tribunal held hearings in the early 2000s, and in 2004 the Tribunal reported that the history of what went on in Turanganui-a-Kiwa was marked by grievous Crown breaches of the history and some of the darkest moments in our nation's history. More than 40% of the men in Turanganui-a-Kiwa died as a result of Crown military action between 1865 and 1872. Settlement negotiations with the Crown began in 2005, and when Dr. Cullen, or Sir Michael as he is now, was the Minister, an agreement in principle was signed in September 2008, and I was very fortunate to be the Minister to work with the iwi to complete the detail of the settlement, and we initialled the deed of settlement at what I thought was a very moving ceremony at Te Papa in July last year. I have to say there was some considerable publicity both on television and in the papers to the initialling, and I was expecting quite some negative emails to start flowing in, as so often they do, but I never received anything, because I think people deep down acknowledged that this was a taonga that did not belong to Te Papa, it belonged to the people of Rongowhakaata. And then the deed was signed last spring on a beautiful Friday morning in September. So I believe that it is very important for people to understand just what went on. Mrs. Turia has outlined the broad history, and I don't think it's necessary or appropriate for me to go over ground that's been so ably covered by her and also by Mr. Horomia. But I just want to focus on what for me is very much one of the highlights of this bill, and that is the way in which we've managed to reach a resolution of Te Hau ki Tūranga, because the Crown simply did come in and confiscate it in 1867. It was removed by force, and it's been kept in various national museums ever since. Many alterations have been made to Te Hauki Tūranga without the consent of Rongowhakaata. And I always enjoyed the initial debates I had with some officials about the legal ownership of Te Hauki Tūranga, and they were saying, well, you know, the statute said that when Te Papa was created, all property of the old Dominion Museum transferred over to Te Papa, and it sounded also very legal, but the reality of the matter is, as we all know, that the ownership of Te Hauki Tūranga was never surrendered by Rongowhakaata, never handed over with their consent. And that's why it's very important to note that Clause 23 of the bill makes it clear beyond any doubt at all that Te Hauki Tūranga vests in the trustees nominated by Rongowhakaata. And I thought that the Select Committee did a very good job, and their commentary is worth referring to, because they said it's currently housed. Oh, it's not just the chair. We know that he is a superstar, but there are others as well, and being the generous soul he is, he'd be the first to acknowledge that. They heard that Rongowhakaata don't wish to return Te Hauki Tūranga or the return to create a financial burden for future generations, and they record that Te Papa and the Ministry for Culture and Heritage have committed themselves to working with Rongowhakaata to ensure a sustainable future for the whare, particularly as regards its relocation. And I endorse 100% what Mr Horomia said. It's been shared with the nation for over 100 years. It's entirely fair and appropriate that central government make a significant contribution to the ongoing costs. It's certainly not going to be a situation where the Crown simply says to Rongowhakaata, well done, it's back in your hands, you look after it. And so I'm very much looking forward to engaging with Rongowhakaata. We've already started, but I'm looking forward to the ongoing engagement to make sure that in the very near future we determine a way in which it can be relocated to Tairāwhiti, but that the receipts of the settlement, or the financial redress of the settlement that enable the iwi to build a future for themselves in Tairāwhiti, will not be spent disproportionately on Te Hauki Tūranga. Mrs Turia has also outlined the commercial and the financial redress, and I'm not going to repeat that, but I just want to say to the people of Rongowhakaata, if you like, as Minister for Culture and Heritage, that I am determined and I am very keen to engage with them sooner rather than later, so that we can work out when exactly Te Hauki Tūranga can go home and how the Crown can help. Mr Speaker, there are many people who have contributed to this settlement. I acknowledge Mr Horomia, who was with me the day the deed was signed. I acknowledge Sir Michael Cullen, who oversaw the preliminary negotiation of the agreement in principle. I guess we all thought, didn't we, in 2009 it would be able to be signed up very quickly, but there have been issues. They have required patience and determination, and I see Stan Pardo nodding. Probably he thinks, well, Minister, that's an understatement. I acknowledge my ministerial colleagues. I particularly acknowledge the Minister of Maori Affairs, with whom I have so enjoyed working on this matter, the Minister of Conservation, who's always very generous when I come knocking about cultural redress, and also the Minister of Land Information. Many government departments and officials have also made very valuable contributions. But as I said in the Ngāti Makino debate a couple of hours ago, one expects that of officials and ministers, because that's our job. But there are people in the gallery today who have given and given and given over many years, given of their own time, given the weekends, at some financial cost, in order to reach this stage. And very few people outside the negotiators for the Crown and the officials, I think, appreciate the sacrifices that the negotiators of treaty settlements make on behalf of their people, and I salute them for their tenacity, their good faith and their courage. So, Mr Speaker, in conclusion, all I want to say is that we have unfinished business. That is the Crown on Rongowhakaata. We've got hopefully a strong ongoing relationship which will blossom in the years to come, and I can think of no better first task for us to get on with that new relationship than to focus on Te Hauki Tūranga to see what we can do, because from my personal point of view, the sooner we can resolve that, the sooner that Te Hauki Tūranga goes home, the better.
I call the honourable member Reno Terakatani. Tēnā koe, Reno.
Tēnā koe.